Martinelli's 2021. Good year, Cookie. Oh, hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of JL's Book Club, where we don't talk about Fight Club because we didn't read Fight Club. I hope you enjoyed episode 1. The feedback has been incredible, so I'm pretending to know since this is being recorded in advance. But this week, as promised, we will be reviewing Invisible Child, Poverty, Survival, and Hope in an American City by Andrea Elliott, though it might be Andrea. You know how those Andreas are. You can say a lot to them, but if you call an Andrea, you better be prepared to fight. And from her author picture, I'm going to go ahead and say, that's an Andrea. That's an elegant, pretty beautiful woman. So she seems pretty much like an Andrea. So we'll call her Andrea. We'll call her Miss Elliott. How about that? Although I think she lives in New York City, so they're real skimping on the details. So maybe we'll hit up her DMs and say, just for my book show, are you single? Just want to speak clearly on your background. That's all. Not creepy in any way. Well, this book came to my attention because it made the New York Times top 10 books of 2021. And I remember it's about a girl named Dasani, who is in fact named after the bottled water. That's not a joke, that's true. And although Dasani does sound like a name, like I would have guessed that the bottled water was named after somebody named Dasani. But there was a series of newspaper articles, and I'm forgetting the year, and it doesn't say but it was around 2012, 2013, there was a 5-part series in the New York Times, which I remembered, that I believe was an award-winning series on this girl Dasani and her life through the shelter system of New York. And it was a really great article series, and that's obviously why this writer was given the ability to follow her for years, to see what went beyond the scope of the articles in terms of her life. So I just finished the book recently, and it was pretty incredible. It's a pretty incredible book. Her access to this family, her examination of the foster system and the shelter system, the school system, very robust, very comprehensive, and also very, very readable. It doesn't read like a sort of sociology book or a history, but it feels more like you're reading history as it's happening. And one of the things I found really great about the book is, and if I have any conservative folks, sorry, this might veer into critical race theory as it connects historical wrongs, both not recent and recent, to the current plight of this impoverished family and girl. She does a great job of sort of tracing the family roots after slavery and showing all the steps that, this person was successful, but then the government passed this law that didn't allow certain people to benefit from certain things. And then this neighborhood, because of government action and racism, ended up becoming, losing its value, and etc. And you see, she does this isn't the bulk of the book, but makes certain connections throughout time in recent generations that shows, this didn't just happen because of one person's lack of personal responsibility or personal choices. In certain respects, things that happen to people are the result, directly and indirectly, of forces so far beyond their control. I know this one isn't as funny as the review that I did last time. Sometimes books aren't funny. Sometimes even a gifted comedian like me can't perform comedy alchemy and turn tragedy into hilarity. And it also reminds me, shameless family plug, my sister-in-law, Rachel Swarns, has a book, came out many years ago, called American Tapestry, which is about Michelle Obama's ancestry. So she sort of traced Michelle Obama's lineage to slavery. Now, I'm not trying to make a shameless plug, but this book kind of reminded me of a sad version of that, in terms of, even if you have people striving in the past, forces outside your control can turn things to shit. Whereas in American Tapestry, it showed that with some luck and with some enterprising people in your family, great things can emerge from horrible beginnings. And that was what was so impressive about that book, is that it showed it took for Michelle Obama to reach the White House without obviously taking away any of her brilliance and accomplishments and hard work. The farther you back in American history, back to slavery, you see it took an enterprising person to have some luck here, to not be killed or fall into poverty or this. And it took the next generation more luck and skill and ingenuity and talent to get here. So that Michelle Obama, it wasn't just, oh, she was really good and she rose above it. It was like, if any of those dominoes don't fall during our history of racism and oppression in this country, she's probably not where she is. Through no fault of her, she would still maybe be an accomplished person or a successful person, but you see also the, horrible things could have happened anywhere along that way, the way it happened to so many families. So the point of bringing that up is that is kind of like a happy ending version of this story, whereas this book in many ways is kind of the sad story of how all these things can happen. So the passage I'm going to read this month or this week or whenever I'm doing these, however often I'm doing these episodes, at least once a month per the JL Max plus Prime contractual obligation, but probably more because I get bored and want to make content, because everybody makes content. But this is basically talking about Dasani's mother and her family coming up in the 80s early 90s, when AIDS was ravaging certain communities, including drug users. But it was ravaging, and it's an intense sort of passage. But I will read that for you now, and hopefully you don't enjoy it, but find it interesting and compelling enough to maybe go buy the book. By the way, none of these are endorsed. Despite my reach of dozens of people, nobody is paying me to endorse any book. Chanel, which is Dasani's mother, and Roach began to play hooky. They rode the subway, swiping candy from vendors as the trains pulled in. This gave Chanel a rush, as if she were winning at a secret game. The cousins stuck together while their mothers bickered. In April 1991, Joni grabbed Chanel and left. For the next 2 years, they drifted in and out of homelessness. At a shelter in Queens, they contracted tuberculosis. They stayed in 3 other shelters, including the former hospital where Joni was born, the place that became Auburn, which is the shelter featured earlier and later in the book where Dasani was growing up. By age 15, Chanel had attended 7 different schools. Now, quick break, because the author speaks in this book of trying to focus on childhood stories in this, because whenever you talk about oppression, systemic racism, historical things, certain political constituencies in this country tend to go, oh, rah, 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 rah. But they always give a pass to children. So by showing how so many of these root problems begin and grow when people are children, she hopes to open eyes of people to say, okay, if you think it's a 35-year-old's personal choice, a lot of these 35, 40, 50-year-olds started as kids with no hope and no opportunity. So what do you do then? Do you condemn a 7-year-old for bad personal choices? And no, you don't. So that was part of why the book was structured the way it was. Money was so tight that the following year, in 1994, Chanel agreed to have some teeth pulled. A dentist in East New York was offering a subway token worth $1.25 for each tooth. Working from a dingy office on Pennsylvania Avenue, he billed Medicaid for this scam. None of that mattered to Chanel, Roach, Margot, or Joni, all of whom had teeth pulled. Chanel remembers her body thrashing in pain as strangers held her down in the chair. The dental office charged Medicaid $235 for pulling 4 of Chanel's teeth. She left with a few subway tokens. Now, what you might be thinking is, wow, that dentist is a horrible person. And yes, that certainly seems to be the case, but the question you should also be asking is, wow, what a world where teenagers desperate for money are going to have their teeth pulled. Chanel clung to Roach and her sister, Sherelle, who was now living in a Bronx homeless shelter with her 3-year-old son. The boy's father, Joe, had gone to prison for killing a man in the upstate city of Utica. It was around this time that Chanel noticed the odd grape-colored marks on her cousin Sherelle's face. "I'm allergic to chocolate," Sherelle said. She was dating a new man and had gotten pregnant. A few months later, the man enlisted in the army, where a medical exam revealed HIV in his blood. "Mommy, I got AIDS," Sherelle told her mother, Margot, on the phone. "Oh, you ain't got no AIDS." "Yes, I do. You'll see when you have to bury me." Margot raced up to the Bronx where her daughter showed her the test results. Cherelle's body began to shut down, but she wanted to live long enough for the infant to be born. She spent her final weeks at Presbyterian Hospital in Upper Manhattan, where I was born, by the way. Chanel sat by her cousin's bed as the room filled with family, assuming that's Columbia Presbyterian, not to make this harrowing, depressing story about me, but assuming that's Columbia Presbyterian Hospital, that's where I was born. 10 pounds, 7 ounces. Big baby. Still a big baby, according to some. Don't be crying over me, Cherelle told them. When y'all come here, I want y'all laughing and joking. A pall hung over them. They had recently lost Junior, the uncle who used to rob dealers with a stolen police badge. He had died in a car accident. Then Joni saw her brother in a dream. Junior was driving the same car that killed him. When Joni tried to get in the car, he snapped, "It ain't your time, get out." In the Sykes family, it was common to dream of the dead. They brought messages of comfort or caution. Another night, Uncle Junior appeared in his niece Cherelle's dream. He was coming for her, he said. The doctors kept Cherelle alive on a respirator until her baby girl was born via C-section. Cherelle died that same day, April 12, 1994, 5 months after AIDS became the leading cause of death for young black men in America. Cherelle's baby survived and, thanks to an antiretroviral drug, was spared the virus. Everyone began calling the baby Little Cherelle. Now she needed a home, as did Cherelle's older child, the boy named after his father, Joe. Still in prison, Joe learned about all of this, the illness, Cherelle's death, the new baby by a different man, in a phone call. He asked Cherelle's sister, Roach, to take care of the boy. She agreed despite her own burdens. Roach also had a new baby by the best friend of the man who had infected her sister. The whole neighborhood seemed to be falling to AIDS. Chanel had sworn off men before learning that Roach, too, was sick with AIDS. Sex led to misery. Chanel stopped wearing dresses or makeup. She avoided men by acting like them, by being the aggressor. She trained herself to show less emotion. She responded coolly to the decline of Roach, who had a needier way of dying than her sister. "Come over to the house. Help me watch the kids," Roach pleaded by phone. She was now caring for 4 children, her own 3 girls, and her late sister's boy, while the baby known as Little Cherelle had gone to live with her father's mother. A sore began to fester on Roach's chin. "There ain't nothing wrong with you," said Chanel, now 19. She did not know, she would later tell herself, that Roach would die hard and horrible, or even die at all. They were at the start of their lives. But the apparitions continued. One night in Roach's sleep, her late sister Cherelle came to say that Roach's time was up. By the summer of 1998, Roach looked gaunt, almost ghost-like, said Joe, who saw her for the last time while he was in prison. She'd made the trip to show him his son. She died that September. Months later, it was Chanel who saw Roach in a dream. They were little again riding the swings. Roach wore a white dress that whooshed up and down as Chanel swung alongside her. "I'm so sorry I didn't come," Chanel told her. "I didn't know." They kept swinging. "I forgive you," said Roach. Then she vanished, leaving Chanel alone on the swings. So, not a funny book, clearly. And I don't do that because the book is not some sort of poverty porn or anything, but I felt like that was a good example, even though that book tells you nothing about Dasani herself or her journey, which is, I will leave it up to you to purchase the book and read it. But it's sort of showing just another generation, by the time her mother is, sort of a mom with 8 kids, with a history in a gang, in and out of rehab, it would be very easy to just give up on that person. But the book spends some time, but not even 20% of the book. It's probably 10% of the book, showing the past and how it affects. And if that's at what point, in other words, do you blame the mother? Because you can see Chanel's experience was harrowing and horrific in her teens and younger than that. So I just thought this book was engaging, interesting, not to sound cheesy, fairly heartbreaking, but the author, in my mind, achieves her goal of sort of showing you, what we need is, there has been a history of things that unfortunately so many people in this country want to deny, stop the teaching of, but there are historical problems, and the education part is about making new generations appreciate what happened, and if it took the weight of the federal government and systemic racism and societal racism to create so many of these issues. The idea of just saying, pull yourself up by your bootstraps and stop complaining and be colorblind in no way can fix the problem. So I think the book shows the issues that we have to teach, and also the size of the remedy is something we're probably not equipped or willing to do. But the truth is, education and massive amounts of money and opportunity is the solution. But it is less focused on all that. It sort of uses real life stories and a real person and a real girl without necessarily preaching the whole book, but demonstrates what's at stake, how poorly we've treated some people in this country for generations, and what it will take to repair that. And unfortunately, we're probably not a country right now, mentally or spiritually, and I don't mean that in a religious way, but I mean that in a, what is the spirit of this nation? If we can't fix things, like get on board together with things like COVID, I don't know how we're going to probably fix issues like this. But it is a great book, and maybe if you know somebody out there who leans conservative or is a little more cynical when it comes to critical race theory or this author didn't write the book really for me. I think she wrote it hoping to reach some of those people who dismiss so much stuff out of hand. And this book makes it really, really hard to dismiss causes and effects in terms of poverty and race in this country. So I don't have a real rating system set up, but this is a highly recommend, if that counts as a rating. So highly recommend this book. It's enjoyable at times. It's enlightening for most of it. So Invisible Child by Andrea Elliott. I'm assuming that's how she pronounces it. But maybe her time shadowing a family in shelters, maybe she dropped the Andrea. Maybe she's like, you can call me Andrea. I'm cool. But either way, highly recommend it. Next month's book, folks, will be the first fiction book that I'll be reviewing for the year. Black Leopard, Red Wolf by Marlon James. Haven't read it. A lot of people are calling it the Black Game of Thrones. So we'll see. I don't know. Maybe it is. But this is going to be a book where maybe I love it. Maybe I think it's weird and hate it. But next book review up right here. So thank you for watching. And remember, everybody, books, they're like documentaries for smart people.